Alright everybody, this is a pretty big video. We are going to be getting all science in this, talking about liquid aeration, and not only what it is and how it compares to the more traditional core aeration, but whether or not it's actually going to be a good fit for you and your lawn. I'm going to give you a breakdown on everything you need to know, so bear with me. We are about to get Bill Nye the Science Guy up in here. So you may or may not know, but aeration is something that has been involved in agriculture for thousands of years. That loosening up and breaking up of the soil is vital to successful plant growth in a lot of situations. Lawns are no exception. The modern day American lawn that we all have, no matter what kind of grass it is, benefits from having that soil structure simplified and loosened up to allow for the flow of air, nutrients, water, and even roots. Liquid aeration is a type of soil treatment that has been developing for years, but it's only in the last few that it's really started to pick up mainstream momentum. The reason that we are talking about liquid aeration right now, even though it's something that so many other turf management professionals have touched on, from Matt Martin with the Grass Factor, definitely check out his video on liquid aeration because he does a really good job of explaining the different kinds of products out there if it's something that you're interested in the science behind everything. But from Matt to Lawncology with John Perry to the Lawn Care Nut with Alan Hain, a lot of people have touched on this because of its momentum and growth as a trend. But the reason that Picture Perfect wants to talk about it, not just with our at-home viewers, but with our clients especially, is because it is something that we have built in at a low application rate into our fertilizer program during the spring, but it's also something that we are going to begin offering as an alternative to the traditional core aeration that most of our clients already receive. So to understand what liquid aeration is and how it works, we first need to have an understanding of basically the geology behind aeration, what aeration even is, how it is involved in your soil, and why it's important to building a healthy lawn. As a broad term, aeration is the process of air being able to flow through a medium. Now, this can be water, this can be another kind of gas, or this can be soil. Soil is a medium, and we talk about aeration when the medium is soil. We get into the subject of porosity. Soil aeration is with reference to the air gaps that are within the soil system structure. And the porosity of the soil is how much space is available between the particles of the soil system for air or liquids to exist. So you have your solid soil particles, and they're all kind of jostled in there together, and then the space between them is your porosity. Porosity is inversely related to the soil's bulk density, and bulk density is simply the mass of the soil itself over the volume that it is taking up. So if you have a high bulk density, then you've got a whole lot of mass packed into a relatively smaller volume. So if you have a high bulk density, you have a low porosity because there's not as much room for that space that you need for that air or liquid presence. Now, at the risk of oversimplifying for our purposes, bulk density is a pretty good measure for us of compaction, and that porosity is a pretty good measure of aeration. This is where I'm going to hit you guys with some 8th grade science and get a little Bill Nye. I want to show you a real world example of those concepts, bulk density and porosity, and we're even going to talk a little bit about surface area. Bear with me, you don't have to sit through this science lesson if you're not interested. You can skip ahead to what we talk about in a little bit, but it might be something worth knowing. Alright, so I've changed out of my clean white shirt because I don't want to get grapes on it, because I've got some grapes here.
Hey, bump, bump, bump. Got any grapes?
So what I want you to pretend, and this seriously is like a 8th grade or lower science lesson, but it really does make the point. I want you to imagine that these grapes are soil particles. This is your soil system, these grapes, and this container is your yard. So when you have a soil system with good porosity, like these grapes here, water and air are going to flow through the spaces between them. And if you take a look, you can see There we go. You can see how much space, especially along the sides of the jar, there is between these grape structures. These grapes are solid and everything in between them is that porous space that we want. So what we're gonna do is we are going to take our soil grapes and we are going to pour our cup of water into our soil grapes and see what happens. All right, so as you can see, our water has gone up to about the same top level as the grapes, but it has interspersed the whole way down. The grapes aren't floating, the grapes are still in their state of mind that they were in before, but the water is existing among those open spaces, that pore space. So that's what we're looking for in a soil system. We want water and nutrients and air to be able to exist in the gaps between these solid soil structures. What I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna pour this water out of the grape jar. I'm going to leave all the grapes in here. So we're going to have the exact same amount of grape mass or soil mass, but we're gonna smash them.
Smash.
We're going to smash them real good, and that's going to result in reducing the amount of volume that that same mass of grapes is occupying. So when we reduce the volume but we retain the mass, we increase our density. And we have that higher density, we're losing porosity, and that is an example of compaction. So let's do that. I'm going to let Brandon smash the grapes. He deserves some happiness in his life. Smash the grapes. And voila. So notice how the grapes are taking up a much smaller volume compared to where they were earlier. So their level on this jar is lower. That means that they're taking up less space, but it's the same amount of grapes, same amount of guts of the grapes. So we are retaining our soil mass, but lowering that volume and raising the density. This means that we have less porous space, lower porosity, it's not as aerated. So let's pour the same amount of water into this jar and see where it goes. Not gonna lie, I really hope that this works how I'm expecting it to. It did. All right, so take a look at this. What ended up happening is you can see through our soil system, there is a little bit of water that filtered into that and is saturating it like we did before. However, it's not as much of that water. So we've got the same amount of water going into the soil system, and you can see a good inch or more of it is sitting on top of these grapes. It's not able to saturate all the way down through because it's too compacted and there's not enough space in that soil system. This is why if you have a compaction problem in your lawn, it ends up translating to a drainage problem. A lot of the time we'll see a compacted area having puddles of water, pooling water forming on the surface for extended periods of time after rainfall or running the irrigation. That's because that water doesn't have anywhere to go. It's out of space that it can fill, so it only can sit on the top. And water is an easy example of this, but like we talk about, roots, nutrients, air, microbes, all of these are also at the mercy of how much porous space is available in your soil system. And there is such a thing as too high of porosity. We don't want it to be a situation where within a week all of the nutrients are leaching out because there's so much free-flowing space, and we don't want it to be where there's instability in the soil. But it's important to be able to find that happy medium. It's science! All right, so we understand bulk density and compaction. We understand porosity and aeration, how that air and liquid flow through a soil system is important for root development. And that's where I want to bring it back to what's actually relevant to turf management and the process known as aeration. For a compacted soil system, or again, one with high bulk density and low porosity, The process of aeration is meant to bring that ratio into better balance by relieving some of that bulk density, loosening things up, increasing the volume, and creating a greater porosity. Traditionally, and for 99% of picture-perfect clients, that's been done with a core aeration service. Core aeration, if it's something that you aren't familiar with, is when we take a plug of soil about the size of a big person's thumb or a cork, basically, 2 to 4 inches deep from the surface of the soil, and we pull that core out of the soil structure using what's called an aerator, and then leaving it behind on the dirt to eventually break down and return to that soil system. This creates macropores in the soil structure. I'm talking big Mac Daddy pores, again, pores relating to that porosity, that allows for major airflow and a sudden relieving of that soil system from that compaction. As weathering takes place and these macropores begin to collapse, they still break down into finer and finer systems that allow for the transport of water and roots and microorganisms and different things like that. So it ends up being a process that opens the surface layer of the soil up to greater movement of all the important things, right? That's the idea. Okay, makes sense. However, there are several flaws with core aeration that critics are eager to cite that are worth mentioning. And it doesn't mean that core aeration isn't valuable. Aeration as a whole is a good thing, so core aeration by nature is a good thing. However, there are a few things that make it imperfect. First, especially pertaining to residential turf management like that Picture Perfect provides, there is a practicality problem, and that is because we are breaking into very aggressively that surface of the soil structure and putting shallowly buried structures such as cables or irrigation heads at risk of damage if they are not properly marked and avoided. This either becomes an inconvenience for homeowners because they have to go through the whole flagging process. And by the way, now is the best time to get those flags or markers from Lowe's, Home Depot, wherever you get them from before they sell out. By September, they will be sold out. So if you get core aerated, just go ahead and get them now if you don't have them already, so that you don't have to call me and say, but I can't mark my sprinklers. There's nothing left to mark with. Or it can become a problem when all of a sudden you get home after your aeration was done that day and your satellite TV doesn't work. In addition to structural damage, there is a lot of wear and tear that can occur to the turf itself because of these heavy aggressive machines that are being used for aeration. And that almost always fills in because aeration is usually being done with seeding for cool season lawns, or those warm season ones fill in their own holes. So long term it doesn't really matter, but in the short term there are always situations each year where somebody gets home and they say, "What have you done to my lawn? It's a mess." Second, a fair argument can be made that when you are removing these cores, it's only from maybe 20% on average of the surface area of the soil itself. So if we've got a surface area of 100 square feet and we're only pulling out a core from 20% of that area, so 20 square feet, all of a sudden that's 80% or 80 square feet of the yard that we're not really doing anything to. So while that 20% definitely helps, and of course we don't want to just dig up the entire yard, that would be a terrible idea, it's kind of this awkward in between of, could there be something that has better coverage? And third, because a depth of only 2 to 4 inches approximately is actually being removed and being aerated with a core aeration service, we can't really dig any deeper than that because that just exposes us to even more obstacles that we could hit. There's a good chance that that deeper level of soil can still have the same compaction issues that the surface was having just a little while before. A lot of turf grasses, especially fescue, which is what we're taking care of, develop root structures naturally that are double or triple that depth that we're actually getting with the core aerator. So if the roots want to go that deeper, we want to free up that soil compaction, open up that porosity as much as we can, as deep as we can. So as soil scientists and turf management professionals have really gotten involved in the scientific method that comes with testing products and testing methods and looking at the results in a lawn, we're seeing more and more start to branch out and explore their alternatives because of of these imperfections in the process of core aeration. So this is where liquid aeration comes in and gets its time in the spotlight. There are several successful product lines that approach the concept of liquid aeration in different ways. Whether it's through wetting agents or polymers, they end up acting differently with the same goal in mind. The product that Picture Perfect uses and that gets the most hype on the network of professionals that we communicate with is one that is utilizing both potash and humic acid, among a few other things, and combining them to do basically a chemical breakdown. So this kind of treatment is accomplishing two distinct things that end up working together to not only create a more aerated, balanced soil system, but also a healthier lawn, which is really cool because it just aids in that overall goal in the first place. First, our liquid aeration is actually aiding in the development of a deep and complex root system for your lawn. It makes sense why this would be valuable for a product like this because roots are basically one of nature's aerators. Roots, earthworms, and yes, moles are all key parts of that breaking apart of soil and really driving into that soil system to give space for air and water and other things to flow along those root lines. So not only does a strong root system increase the porosity of the soil in and of itself, but it also means that your turf grass is going to be healthier, especially during periods of stress like the summer, because it's going to have a lot more access long term to water and nutrients that are being accessed at deeper levels and through that complex system. Second, potash and humic acid work together to basically reorganize the soil structure at a chemical level. We are breaking bonds on a chemical level, and as a result, these complex minerals that your grass can't do anything with are all of a sudden being brought down into a more basic state that makes them not only more transportable, but also more absorbable by that complex root structure that we're also creating. So not only are we unlocking really key nutrients like phosphorus and potassium and calcium that your grass needs to really thrive, but we're also creating micro fissures in the soil structure itself. So these micro fissures act as micro pores, which, like the macro pores that core aeration makes, are really vital and key to the effective transport of air and water and microbes and nutrients through that soil system. So not only are we developing a better root system and increasing the porosity of the soil, which is the whole purpose of aeration in the first place, but even better, we are actually increasing the overall surface area of the soil structure. And again, I'm gonna get all Bill Nye the Science Guy on you guys to show you exactly how this works. All right, so I'm not gonna smash any grapes this time, but I am going to measure and do math. Oh boy. So I've got a stack of Post-it notepads here. This is gonna be a really great representation of surface area. So surface area, as the term would imply, means the square measurement of the surface areas. So I'm going to measure and add the square footage of all 6 sides to determine what the surface area of this stack of Post-it notes would be. So the face of a Post-it note measures 3 inches on either side, and these 4 stacked together is 1.5 inches. So let's do some quick math. So 3 by 3 is 9 and 3 by 3 is 9, so we're up to 18 square inches just on those 2 sides. And then the sides where they're stacked together, that's 3 by 1.5, so 4.5 times 4 is also 18. So we've got a total of 36 square inches as the surface area of a stack of 4 Post-it notepads. Now let's do some aerating. Let's break up this soil particle in half, and let's just kind of get 2 smaller soil particles where it's the same amount of mass, same amount of soil, but all of a sudden there's a difference in the surface area. So let's do that math again. So we still have 2 sides that are 3 by 3 inches, so that's a total of 18, but we're now down to a 3 by 0.75 side on 4 sides. So now one stack of 2 Post-it notepads is going to be a total of 27 square inches. So we remember when it was all 4 together, it was 36 square inches. Now, as 2 separate stacks of 2 each, we're talking a surface area of 54 square inches. So same amount of mass, same amount of soil material, but that surface area has significantly increased. Let's do it again. Let's take all 4 as separate stacks and determine what that surface area is going to be. All right, so 1 Post-it note pad. Again, we still have the 2 sides that are 3 by 3, so that adds up to 18. But now one side is going to be 3 by 0.375, which is 3/8 of an inch. So that means that one side is 9/8 of a square inch, which means that 4 of them together is going to be 36/8, which is the same thing as 4.5 square inches. So we have 1 Post-it note pad having a surface area of 22.5 square inches. We have 4 independent Post-it note pads here, so that ends up being 90 square inches. All of a sudden, with the power of aeration, we have gone from 36 square inches in terms of this total surface area to 90 square inches. Now, this was just by breaking up 1 particle into 4. Let's think about how much that compounds when we're talking about billions of particles in a soil system. It's a huge difference, and every square inch that's available is another binding point where nutrients, elements, water, microbes can all latch on and get a foothold to make your soil more fertile. So a greater soil surface area relative to the soil's bulk density means that we are going to have a higher cation exchange capacity. Yeah, I know. Wipe that blank look off your face. I'm gonna explain myself. All you really need to know about cation exchange capacity is that it impacts how many other nutrients, how much water, how many microbes can latch onto those soil particles and hold on and stay in the system longer. In RVA, because our soil has such a sandy foundation, we have naturally low CECs, that cation exchange capacity, because overall, like we just learned, that surface area of the soil structure isn't as high as it is if we had a silt or clay type soil. So increasing the soil's surface area means that we are able to hold nutrients in that soil system longer, and that water or anything else being put down isn't going to leach out nearly so quickly. And that means that your grass with that complex root structure has more time to be able to absorb it fully. All right, you guys have done an awesome job so far on suffering through this science with me. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you've made it, because I want to end this discussion on liquid aeration with a certain little side note. Core aeration, like I said before, is not a bad thing. It's still a good thing, and we're not trying to fully replace it. It still is absolutely the best option when we are seeding a lawn that has yet to be established. So my mature, picture-perfect lawns that are at least 80% healthy, thick fescue, liquid aeration is probably going to be the better option. But if it's a new property to a fertilizer program, and either it's nothing but weeds or we've killed off all the weeds and now it's nothing but bare areas, the holes being left behind when we pull those cores out of the soil system are going to give your new seed a really important foothold so that A, it doesn't wash away, and B, it's sheltered as it develops a root system to kind of anchor it into the soil. This foothold is provided perfectly by an established lawn in its thatch layer and at the base of that plant. It holds its seed in just fine. That's why it's an overseeding. We're just throwing some seed out over the grass. But if it's a seeding service where it is the first dose of seed that this lawn is really getting and it doesn't have anything established, you want some sort of foothold so that the seed can be as successful as possible. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the big reason that we are explaining liquid aeration right now is because when aeration and seeding season starts in 2 or 3 months, we want to be able to offer the alternative of liquid aeration to the traditional core aeration for all of our picture perfect clients that have that established lawn. So if you're on one of our programs, if you're getting core aeration and overseeding with us and you would like to have the liquid aeration done instead, either because you're interested to see if it works as well, if you know that it's going to work as well after we've broken down this science, or you think it might even work better, or if it's just a convenience thing and you don't want to have to worry about flagging your lawn or doing anything to get the yard ready, give me a call and let me know. And if you aren't a picture perfect client but you follow our channel because you enjoy our content, first of all, you're awesome, and second of all, comment below and let me know what you know about liquid aeration. I've read all the blogs and watched all the videos that I could find from Matt and John and Alan and Pete and everybody else, but I want to know from your experience, have you ever worked with liquid aeration? And if so, how did it do for you? And if you're a professional, did you do it for your clients and how did it work for you? Give me some feedback so that I can be as informed as possible as we move forward with it this season. I appreciate you guys watching. As we move into July, we're going to get stronger and stronger with this aeration and seeding content. Aeration and seeding is the most important service for a fescue lawn. It's a big deal. So we're going to talk about it a lot. August is literally going to be aeration and seeding month. So I'm super excited to help you guys with any questions you have on that topic. But between now and then, we still have more great content coming to you. And next, we're going to be talking about liquid dethatch. Since we've already talked about liquid aeration, they kind of go hand in hand in terms of whether or not they're effective. So I want to break that down for you as well. We'll see you next time, and I hope you have a picture perfect day.